This video is going to go over all the different types of Rebel soldiers under the Rebel Alliance. First are the regular Rebel troopers, known simply as Rebel soldiers. They served as the backbone of the Alliance army, and were made up entirely of volunteers. Rebel troopers were usually employed in squads, and they mainly used guerrilla warfare tactics against the Empire. Due to the Alliance's limited resources, Rebel troopers were not equipped with a standard uniform. Instead, they wore whatever was available and what best suited the environment they were fighting in. The most iconic uniform worn by these soldiers was the one seen during the Battle of the Tantive 4, where they wore black vests and long white helmets. Other uniforms were worn depending on the environment. These included the ones worn on Endor, Hoth, Tatooine, and Solist. Although these uniforms provided far less protection than stormtrooper armor, they did provide the rebels with better mobility and the ability to camouflage into the environment. Rebel troopers were usually equipped with an A280 blaster. Second are the Rebel assault troopers. They were used during Rebel sieges and large-scale attacks. They wore special battle armor, which consisted of a helmet and a full-face visor. It provided them with better protection than the uniforms worn by regular Rebel soldiers. This armor was also worn by Rebel desert troopers, who were used to guard the Rebel base on the planet Corellia. Third are the Rebel honor guards. They were mostly used for ceremonial purposes, like the award ceremony at the end of A New Hope. They wore button-down jackets and wore the same white and long helmets worn by some Rebel soldiers. During ceremonies, they were equipped with electro poles. In some cases, they wore combat armor and were used to guard Princess Leia during battle. Fourth are the Tauntaun troopers. They were trained to ride tauntauns and were primarily used as scouts. They were used on icy planets and were equipped with flamethrowers. Fifth are the Rebel Marksmen, also known as Rebel sharpshooters. They were equipped with an E-17D sniper rifle and were used to harass the enemy from a great distance. A large amount of Rebel marksmen were women. Sixth are the Rebel Marines, also known as Alliance fleet troopers. They were tasked in defending Rebel ships from enemy boarding parties. They wore very similar uniforms to those of the Rebel troopers stationed on Tantive 4. There was at least one Rebel Marine during the Imperial boarding of Tantive 4. Seventh are the Rebel pilots. They flew Rebel starfighters, airspeeders, and light freighters. Though most of them lacked formal training, they made this up with sheer experience and diligence, which made Rebel pilots very dangerous in battle. They typically wore orange flight suits that contained a life support box on the chest. They also wore a helmet that included a visor with a special computer projection for targeting. Eighth are the Rebel Bantha riders. They rode on top of Banthas and used them to strike down enemy defenses. Ninth are the Rebel prison troopers. They guarded the detention facility in the Rebel base on the planet Corellia. They wore full body armor and helmets similar to those worn by Mandalorians. 10th are the Rebel heavy soldiers. They were equipped with blaster cannons and wore light armor. They were used to destroy everything in their path. 11th are the Rebel Jetpack troopers. They wore unique jetpacks that allowed them to hover in the air and attack the enemy from above. 12th are the Rebel Sea Commandos. They were trained for aquatic combat and to operate aquatic vessels. 13th are the Alliance Observers. They were tasked to ensure that Rebel privateers, who were basically Rebel mercenaries, were kept in line and honored their contracts. 14th are the Rebel Infiltrators. They were used to cut into Imperial armored vehicles, especially walkers, and take control of them. They wore all black combat suits and were equipped with jetpacks. 15th are the Rebel Missile Troopers. They were equipped with missile launchers and wore blue combat armor. There was a variant of these troopers called the Armored Missile Troopers, who were equipped with 2 missile launchers. 16th are the Rebel Mortar Troopers. They were trained in mortar combat and were positioned behind front lines, where they could efficiently hit the enemy with mortar shells. 17th are the Rebel Sith Hunters. Though it isn't exactly known what they did, we can assume they were trained to fight against Dark Jedi and Sith. The next set of Rebel soldier types are a part of the Rebel Alliance Special Forces, also known as Specforce. Specforce troopers showed extraordinary skill and were given more advanced equipment than regular Rebel soldiers. First are the Specforce Marines. They were used to fight aboard starships and space stations, and were trained to even fight in zero gravity. They wore light armor and armored spacesuits depending on the environment. Second are the Pathfinders. They were used on stealth missions and for reconnaissance. They generally performed their missions behind enemy lines and were inserted by parachuting down to their target. They were lightly armored and extremely mobile. Third are the Specforce Guerrillas, also known as urban guerrillas. They were trained to fight in urban environments and planet-wide cities like Coruscant. They were experts in hand-to-hand combat. They were usually equipped with blaster pistols and vibro knives. Fourth are the Wilderness Fighters. As the name implies, they were trained to fight in the wilderness like jungles and deserts. They were able to use the environment to their advantage. They usually wore uniforms that suited the environments that they were in. Fifth are the Infiltrators. They mastered the skill of stealth and were sent on missions involving sabotage and raiding. They were also used to start up rebellions on Imperial-friendly worlds. They wore light armor and were equipped with silent weapons like the Adjudicator. Sixth are the Heavy Weapons Specialists. They were specialized in the use of a variety of weapons, including repeating blasters, missile launchers, and artillery. They were trained to never leave their positions during battle, even under fire. This led them to having the greatest casualties in the Spec Force. Last are the Technicians. These included combat engineers, medics, pilots, drivers, and communications specialists. They were mainly used as support for some other Spec Force units. They carried specific equipment depending on their role. For example, the medics carried med packs, while the communications specialists carried advanced comlinks. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe for more videos like this one. And as always, may the Force be with you.